And good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Delvecchio, specializing in life transitions, downsizing in the senior living industry. Coming right up, do you know someone who has a child or a young adult with special needs? Well, you'll want to be tuning in as we're going to hear from a father-daughter tandem that will share their own experiences and offering some valuable tips and advice. And on the second half of the show, how to prevent slips and falls both inside and outside the home. We'll be talking to Dr. José Moret, who will be providing us with some good pointers we all could use. And we'll also be talking with him about ageism, proper nutrition, and advancements of geriatric medicine. He's one of the top geriatric medical doctors in Montreal. All right, the topic of families with special needs kids or young adults is dear to my heart, as I have a 25-year-old daughter with special needs. I've talked about my pride and joy, Lisa, several times on this show. She goes to Wager Adult Education Center in Côte Saint-Luc, great school that really understands young adults with special needs. Well, the past principal of Wager just happens to now be the Director General of the English Montreal School Board. His name is Nick Katalifos. Nick was also the chairman of the board at Giant Steps School of Montreal, and he's the recipient of several prestigious awards, including the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Medal for Public Service, a real community leader. And I see him squirming in his seat here because he is a very humble man. And you know what? We're going to put all those accolades aside because Nick is here today. He is also a husband and a proud dad to two lovely children. His son Manoli is 20 years old and is on the autism spectrum. Nick also has an incredible 25-year-old daughter. Her name is Anna, and she joins us here in studio with me and Nick. So to both of you, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Well, thank you for having us, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here.
Yeah, so glad you made the trip in studio here on a Saturday. First of all, Nick, before we even get started, what about Cole Caulfield in the news? Man, oh man.
Oh, that was depressing. I, like everybody else, I was extremely upset. I just feel fortunate that I happened to be at the game on Tuesday night and I got to see him play at least once this year live. So in any case, I wish him nothing but the best. I hope his injury heals well.
Yeah, good for him. And so what do you say? We tank now for the rest of the year? Get Connor Bedard? I don't know. It's still entertaining, but he is, it says that's a real loss. He's the one that was entertaining. Anyways, we wish Cole all the best. Anna, we're going to bring you in right off the bat here. We're going to start off with you. And you're still in school, from what I understand. So what degree are you pursuing?
I'm in the second year of my master's degree at McGill University right now. It's a Master of Science in Neuroscience. My research is it's geared towards neurodevelopmental disabilities and coping during the pandemic. And I'm trying to see whether or not policies that were published during that time actually aligned with the family's needs.
Interesting, and very interesting. You're in this field. So why did you choose this particular field?
So my ultimate goal is to become a neuropsychologist. So I started with my Bachelor of Arts in psychology at McGill, and then I was offered by my current supervisor a position as a master's student. So I thought it would be a good idea to gain a better perspective as to what the needs of the community were, because as I have been experiencing my own needs related to COVID and to raising someone with a disability, but I wanted to better understand what the actual community and the rest of Canada was experiencing, as I know that my own experiences are only mine. So.
Oh, well, fantastic. Nick, look out. She's taking over here. But, from what I understand, you're also going to be pursuing your education. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm hoping to get into a doctoral program. I've applied to some programs, and I'm hoping to essentially, yes, become a neuropsychologist. So I'm not going anywhere in terms of school for a while.
Well, you know what? Good for you, Anna, and
Thank
best
you.
of luck in your career and your educational aspirations.
Thank you.
Nick, we're going to throw it over to you. And your son, Manoli, he's 20 years old. He's on the autism spectrum. Do you know, at what age was he diagnosed?
Well, first of all, we began to notice that there were some differences, I'll call it that, in terms of his development at about a year and a half by comparison to other kids that age. And we also had a bit of an example in terms of Anna. She's older than he is. She's the big sister. So we realized that he wasn't meeting certain milestones and so on. Began to, try to get him checked out a little bit to see exactly what the situation might be. And ultimately, we got a diagnosis when he was about 3.5 years of age at the Children's Hospital. They were absolutely wonderful to us, and obviously it was a very difficult time. But the reality is it was good to get the diagnosis so that we could begin to formulate a plan of action in terms of helping him to achieve his potential potential.
Yeah, no, and good for you and your family, as we've learned, and we've had specialists, whether it's autism or just special needs in general, that it's so important to get that early diagnosis so you can really get on it right away. And when we hear 2, 3, 4 years old, it's funny, you had a benchmark in Anna. In my case, my daughter was the firstborn, so you tend to benchmark about other kids in the same age, but at a certain point in time, you do start to realize. So good for you for the early diagnosis. Now, it certainly can be challenging for children with special needs in the education system, Nick, and an education system all too well. So just if you can bring us back, which schools, early diagnosis. So bring me the process of Manoli and where did he start and how did he go through an education system?
Well, in Manoli's case, I mean, we knew that he needed quite a bit of help in terms of his education and the whole question of pedagogy in general. Obviously, being in the system, and not just myself, but my wife is an education consultant as well at the MSB. That's how we met. So we're in the system. The issue for us at the time was that his needs were a bit severe, I'm going to call it that, when he was of age to go to school. We started off by getting him into a particular daycare in Laval run by one of the CRDIs, the one in Laval specifically, that also offered certain therapies for children on the spectrum. He was 4, and then the question came up in terms of where do we enroll him for kindergarten. We wanted a little bit of extra help for him because of his challenges. So we wound up looking at Giant Steps, and we were very fortunate that he was accepted. And the wonderful thing about that particular school was that you kind of have the best of both worlds from the perspective that the integration program is an enormous part of the overall program at the school. So what does that mean? Giant Steps has ententes or partnerships with about 14 school boards, including the one that I today am proud to be at the head of. And in essence, Manoli was in school at Giant Steps 3 days a week, where he received specialized care because of the severity of his needs. But 2 days out of the week, he was in a regular school. At the time, we live in Laval, at the Sir Wilfrid Laurier School Board, where he was also attended to by a staffer from Giant Steps. So he got to live the best of both worlds in a neurotypical classroom as well as a specialized classroom where he received some extra help.
Listening to Life Unrehearsed. That's the voice of Nick and his daughter here, Anna, and we're talking about families with special needs. You talked about Giant Steps. Just real quick, because I know you're involved. Giant Steps is in the middle of a major construction. Can you tell us, do you have an update on that?
They are, obviously, we're very excited about it. In terms of the autism community, Giant Steps has embarked on a brand new project. We're building a new state-of-the-art $51.5 million autism center that's going to cater to students who are autistic. But we're working on this from a perspective of 4 what we're calling pillars. So the first pillar is the actual school. The second pillar is an adult education component. That's a partnership with the English Montreal School Board, I'm very proud to say. The third pillar has to do with a community services perspective. So we'll be offering all sorts of programs to the community at large in regards to autism, autistic adults as well as families. And the final pillar is a research pillar, which is a partnership with the Transforming Autism Care Consortium, a very large autism research group that's being run out of the Neuro right now.
Wonderful. Nice to see this. It's amazing. I've seen some of the architect's sketches and very, very great resource we're going to have here in Montreal. And, I got to give a shout out. First of all, good for you. You're trying to find the right education system for a son with special needs, in this case, on the autism spectrum. My daughter, also special needs, not on the autism spectrum, but she ended up going to Summit School. And again, do your research, parents. There are some wonderful organizations out there. So we're talking with Nick Katalifos. He happens to be the Director General of the English Montreal School Board, and his daughter is in studio with us right now, Anna, who is 25 years old. Now, Anna, this is a first for us. We've had a lot of experts on the show and so on, and parents. We've never got the siblings' perspective on someone with special needs. We have to head out to traffic first, Anna, but when we come back, we'd like to hear from you. Some of the challenges you faced as the sister, and what you would recommend to families in the same situation. But first, let's head out to the CJD Traffic Center. We're going to hear from Jill Fitzgerald. We figured to get in a little Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. Let's teach your children well in honor of David Crosby, who passed away this past week at the age of 81. And we do want to teach our children well. Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Del Vecchio, and we're talking about families with special needs children or young adults with the Director General of the English Montreal School Board, Nick Katalifos, and his lovely daughter, Anna. Anna's brother, Nick's son, Manoli, is 20 years old and is on the autism spectrum. And just before traffic, I talked about this is a first for us on Life Unrehearsed. We've had tons of experts with special needs and autism. We've never had a sibling. And that's why I'm so happy that Anna is in studio with us, because we'd love to get the sister, the brother, the sibling perspective on things. So Anna, first of all, let's start with some of the challenges that you have experienced. You're 25 now, your brother is 20. So through the years, what were some of the challenges?
So I think that siblings of individuals with disabilities, all disabilities, not just autism, tend to take on a different set of responsibilities that you'll see in neurotypical sibling relationships, right? So I think that as a sister, I've taken on two roles a little bit tacitly. And the first is that of being Manoli's caregiver. So a lot of individuals in neurotypical sibling relationships will grow kind of in parallel, and they'll be able to meet those developmental milestones together. Whereas in a relationship between siblings, and one sibling is on the autism spectrum or has a disability, there can be an added challenge, as they will require more help with getting to those developmental milestones. And this can come about quite early on in childhood. So I was about 7 when my brother was diagnosed, and I understood pretty quickly that I was going to be taking on extra responsibility when it came to raising him. And the second role is that of being your sibling's advocate. So siblings of individuals with disabilities can sometimes find themselves in situations where they feel the need to defend their siblings or defend their siblings' rights even. And this can happen essentially anywhere. It can happen with extended family that might not understand your sibling's condition very well. And it can also even happen when you're trying to describe your sibling's condition and challenges to their teacher or to their physician that also might not necessarily understand their experience very well. So the awareness of both these roles can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming, especially when you're trying to navigate your own understanding of what your sibling is going through.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and there's a 5-year gap, and then you're going through the early years. Now you're in your teenage years. You're trying to live your own life, and my son is 22. My daughter's 25. My daughter with special needs, and yeah, I when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of Anthony, my son, as well, because I'm sure, there you talk about defending. You do want to end up defending your sibling, sometimes by choice, sometimes not by choice, and so certainly one of the challenges. So now we're going to turn around a little bit. There are many siblings, or maybe friends, cousins listening of the same age. Anna, what would you suggest in terms of words of advice to siblings out there?
I'd say that I have 3 pieces of advice. So the first piece is to stay informed and to do anything that you can that will help you to better understand your brother or sister or cousin's disability. And that can mean developing an understanding of the condition itself, just like finding reputable sources online, like hospital websites, school websites, government websites, but also taking the time to better understand how the condition affects your sibling specifically. So in our case, autism is a spectrum disorder, right? And needs of autistic people can vary from person to person. So I wanted to gain a better understanding as a child as to how is autism going to affect Manoli specifically. And something that has helped me is actually sitting in on some of his assessments with his physicians, with psychologists, and I've even sat in on some of his parent-teacher interviews so that I can gain a better understanding of what to do at home. So that has been hugely helpful. Second word of advice would be to be kind to yourself. It's normal to feel isolated and overwhelmed sometimes when you have a sibling with a disability. And it's also normal to feel like you're never doing enough to help them, even when you're trying your hardest to do so. So knowing when to take a step back for some self-care is really important, since your needs matter as well. And my third piece of advice would be to keep an open mind. It's understandable to feel like you want more out of a relationship with your sibling and that you're just not getting that at certain points in time. And people change and relationships can really evolve. And as you become more adept at understanding your siblings' communication methods and their needs and vice versa, you might see that your relationship becomes more and more fulfilling. And I know that I could speak to this personally, especially in early adulthood for my brother and I.
Sure. And I could tell by the smile on your face how it does. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. Matt Delvecchio here, and we're talking about families with special needs children or young adults with the Director General of the English Montreal School Board, Nick Katalifos, and that was the voice of his daughter, Anna. Nick, we're going to bring it back over to you. And you and your wife, Mary, I know she's a big part of this and listening in, loving parents, doing the best to raise your family. So what recommendations could you give to families and even extended families who have a child or young adult with special needs?
Well, I think Anna already, alluded to this. I mean, the first thing is to be informed, is to get as much information as possible through very credible sources. That last part is particularly important because there's a lot of information that's out there that isn't particularly credible, to be honest, Matt, and sometimes can actually be harmful. So step number one is to be very, very, very careful about vetting that information. Parents must be aware of what the programs are out there, what projects may be out there that can help them. But the other issue, I think the big thing for us was always to try to keep things as quote unquote as normal as possible in terms of family life. It's important to be out there. It's important to be doing things as a family unit. It's important to be doing all sorts of activities and giving the kids a chance to bond and to build up their own relationship. I'm very proud of the fact that our kids have a wonderful relationship. It's very special to see them together, and Manoli's eyes just kind of light up every time his sister walks in the room. He knows that she's there for him, and I think that's very important. And the other issue is, especially when they're younger, one thing that I've heard a lot of parents say, and we try to do this as well, we tried to give the kids some of their own alone time, me time with mom and dad. Because when a kid first gets diagnosed, it's like the entire focus of the family really, really falls upon that particular child. And that can become a bit of an issue for the sibling. So it's really important that we give time to both kids, give attention to both kids, especially at the younger ages. A lot of parents have spoken to me about that, and in my role both as an educator and as a fellow parent and an advocate, I think that's particularly important.
I think that's an excellent point there, Nick. We have about a minute left, Nick. However, you and I are trying to jump on our soapbox to talk to employers, and we see progress. I mean, a lot of progress from 20 years ago, but we still have a long ways to go. And we're seeing some more and more trends, more acceptance from employers to hire people, young adults with special needs. Any comment on that?
Absolutely. That is a huge issue. These are people who make wonderful employees. They're good workers. They want to work. They want to get out there. There's still a very high unemployment rate when it comes to people with special needs. If you look at autistic adults, it's approximately 80%. I believe the latest stats have come out. That is unacceptable, particularly during a time when there's such an employment shortage. And to that end, I'm extremely proud of the fact that the English Montreal School Board has worked on a variety of efforts to get their adult students with special needs out there into the workplace. We've got projects that are going on at Wager, which you know very well about. We also have projects going on at schools like Galileo. It's a big effort to get these students out into stages and opportunities to build up their labor skills, I'm going to call it. And that's going to continue in partnership with other organizations such as Giant Steps and so on.
Some great programs out there. We could only encourage employers with looking for. We've got a labor shortage, it's clear, and you know what? They can be great employees. Absolutely. Thank you for that shout out for that. And talk about shout outs. We're already at a time. I do want to give a shout out to a newspaper that you and Mike Cohen founded called Inspirations, and it's not it gets out there, but what a wonderful newspaper. I want to thank you for getting that. Tons of resources for families that require information for children with special needs. So hats off to you Nick. And you know what? Hats off to your family. Lovely daughter, Anna. Thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you.
And again, Mary, Ma, we can't forget about you. And of course, Manoli, you're probably listening in. And wonderful family. I think you said Manoli had some piano lessons going on today.
Yes, he did.
And so we want to thank you for coming into the studio today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's Nick Katalifos, Director General of the English Montreal School Board, and his amazing daughter, Anna. Nick's son, Manoli, is on the autism spectrum. Coming up on Life Unrehearsed, we've got a bunch of topics to cover, including how to prevent slips and falls, combating ageism, proper nutrition, and caring for the caregiver. We've got a prominent Montreal doctor to talk to us about that. First, let's get a CTV News update.